Support comes from Goethe Pop-Up Seattle, presenting 55 Voices for Democracy, a podcast that brings together conversations with intellectuals, artists, and activists. Inspired by Thomas Mann's speeches produced for the BBC during the rise of fascism in Europe. Available on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Tuesday, and this is Seattle Now. The holidays are a time when hunger hits hard, but this year is like no other, and the numbers in need are staggering. Katie Rains is on the governor's food security coordination team. In a minute, she'll explain why some of the most in need may be afraid to come forward for help. But first, let's get you caught up. UW Medical Center was one of the first to receive a batch of COVID-19 vaccines. 3,900 doses arrived yesterday. Today, they'll start administering them. The vaccine can be refrigerated for up to 5 days. Beyond that, it needs to stay well below freezing. The state expects to get more than 200,000 doses by the end of the month. Washington's 12 electors unanimously cast their votes for President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Monday's votes were part of the Electoral College votes being cast across the country. The final tally sealed Biden's presidential election victory, 306 votes to President Trump's 232. And the University of Washington will not play in Friday's Pac-12 championship game. The Huskies were replaced because the number of positive COVID tests on the team made it impossible to comply with Pac-12 rules. Oregon has the next best record in the North Division and will face the South Division champion, USC. The pandemic has devastated families, and right now, 1.8 million people in our state can't afford food. Nationwide, food insecurity is up 45% since last year. Katie Rains serves on Governor Jay Inslee's food security coordination team. She's also a policy advisor at the Washington State Department of Agriculture, and she's here to help us understand the scope. Katie, thanks so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Patricia.
So what was the situation a year ago, and how severe has the problem become right now in Washington?
You know, a year ago, we were really just seeing the final bounce back from the 2008 recession. It took nearly a decade for the numbers to recover and to go back to pre-recession numbers at food banks and hunger relief organizations around the state. That could still look like upwards of 850,000 people in Washington seeking food assistance in a single month. But as of the day that we went to a stay home and stay healthy directive in March, that number doubled virtually overnight. Right now, our current estimates are about 1.6 to 1.8 million Washingtonians are experiencing hunger right now.
That's absolutely stunning, Katie. And I know that you're a policy expert, but you're also a person in this world. And I wonder, when you think about this, what worries you?
What worries me is the people who are needing these services for the first time, who may not know how to access them, who fear the stigma associated with seeking help. And I hope that they'll recognize that we're all trying to come together, from government to local community organizations to communities of faith, to make that resource available to anybody who needs it without any shame or stigma. And we recognize that while dollars may be tight, food is something that we're happy to provide in kind, so that you can keep the power bill paid or keep up with rent or stay in your home, whatever other expenses need to be prioritized right now. But anecdotally, we've heard from some of our large hunger relief partners this year that upwards of 40% of the folks seeking services were new and first-time users benefiting from state food assistance.
It sounds like in a lot of ways we're still really at the triage phase because the need is so great. And I know that food banks usually see a bump in need around this time of year. How are they handling it?
So many different ways. And I just want to thank all of the individuals involved in food banks and food pantries, meal programs and Meals on Wheels programs. They have really just done something heroic this year to keep people fed. Our agency had never been in the business of buying food directly. We issued funding to hunger relief organizations, but this year we've purchased about $25 million worth of shelf-stable food to subsidize the donated food that used to show up and that was turned on its head when the pandemic started and we had some food supply disruptions. They're also receiving a lot of generous support from the community. I know many have been surprised and overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Hunger is a huge crisis this year. It's probably the next public health crisis right up next to COVID-19. Some of them are relying on National Guard to keep the organization staffed. Right now, there are National Guard deployed in 8 counties around our state, including King County. Most of their pre-COVID workforce were volunteers, and many of them were retirees who are needing to stay home. They're getting creative and finding new partnerships with transportation companies, with large facilities that have big parking lots where they can do drive-up distributions. It has been a year of adaptation and innovation for everyone, but folks are finding a way to get by and keep their neighbors' pantries stocked.
We know that Black, Indigenous, and other people of color have been harder hit by COVID in terms of the virus and in terms of job security. How is hunger hurting those communities, and what are we doing to try to help?
You know, one of the most startling kind of bits of information this year is that during the pandemic, the Latinx community was 3 times more food insecure than white folks across our state. Public charge is a federal rule that could restrict someone's access to immigration status in the future if they benefit from government programs while they're here currently. So many folks try to avoid being on file, having benefited from government programs. So that's why we've worked with our NGO partners and the hunger relief community broadly to make the food available and set them up to be the trusted community resource. And for these additional food purchases we've been making, there's no documentation required. And so that allows folks to access food without being fearful of their name being on record and having a future problem with their immigration status.
Yeah. Katie, I know that we've been talking a lot about how difficult things are right now for everyone and how long this is likely to last. I can't imagine that you could do this job without seeing some light somewhere. What gives you hope as we move into 2021?
I think about an organization up in Skagit County. Before the pandemic, they were a single site in a more rural part of the county. When the pandemic hit, they ended up taking over the operation of multiple smaller, more rural pantries who were run by elders in their 70s and 80s. And when they couldn't do it, this organization, Helping Hands, they stepped up and started operating multiple facilities. And then they started expanding. And so they're now operating 17 distinct sites with support from National Guard to really make sure that every kind of nook and cranny of their community, recognizing that transportation is a huge barrier for folks who are, low income right now or having other difficulties getting around, to go from 1 to 17 over the course of a couple of months, that makes me feel like we can really pull something off here.
Who has the biggest responsibility here? I know in my Facebook group, in my neighborhood group, I see so much need and I see a response to that need, and that's heartening. Who bears the largest responsibility here? Is it the federal government? Is it the state? Is it the county?
I would simply say that we all bear a significant responsibility right now and for the foreseeable future. As I told you earlier, it took about 10 years for the need for hunger relief to go down to pre-recession levels. So we anticipate there's going to be a big need for quite some time. There are plenty of organizations that are still in need of volunteers to sort food, to pre-pack boxes, or to deliver if you want a contact-free opportunity. A lot of organizations, Meals on Wheels in particular, are needing to do significant numbers of home deliveries right now. Reaching out to your local food bank or meal program and finding out what they're including in their current food drive and seeing if you can help pick up a couple extra things on your next shopping trip. There's making a donation directly to a local organization, or if you want to help with the big picture, you can contribute to the Washington Food Fund, and that'll get food to organizations across the state. So we all have a part to play in addressing this, and it's one of the ways that we can demonstrate our care for each other, our neighborhood, our community during this hard time. And a lot of folks have been trying to find ways to feel connected and to contribute. And I would say that helping get people fed is a really important way to do so.
Right. And even a small effort can make a really big difference. Katie Rains, really good to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you so much.
Katie Rains serves on Governor Jay Inslee's Food Security Coordination Team and is also a policy advisor at the Washington State Department of Agriculture. Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. The show is produced by Sophie Reed, Clare McGrane, Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow. As this memorable year comes to an end, it's good to know we got through it together. KUOW has been able to bring you programming that broadens your perspective, thanks to our members who step up to support this work. If KUOW has been there for you at some point in the past year, consider making a financial gift to ensure a new year of telling important stories about our community. Use the link in our description to make your gift today. And thanks.